How are you feeling this beautiful Sunday morning? Okay, you want to do a sound check? Just a quick one. Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, you guys. So my downstairs neighbor moved out. Well, actually, two of my downstairs neighbors are moving out right now. The one already moved out, the one I told you guys about, which, I wish there was some kind of thing that we could wear as gay people that let women know that we're gay, besides like a rainbow or something like that, but some way of letting them know. Because my neighbor, the one that I told you guys about not too long ago, that it just felt like she wanted to tell somebody that she was tired that day, if you guys didn't see that episode, it was like maybe 2 episodes back, I think I talked about her. But she seemed like a really nice girl. She kept to herself. It was a situation where I'm kind of the nosy neighbor. I was being the nosy neighbor because it seemed like she was with this guy that she wasn't very happy with, that she was living with down there when I first moved in. And then all of a sudden, he moved out, or he wasn't around anymore. And I didn't see him physically moved out, just he wasn't around anymore. And then this other guy showed up, a handsome gentleman. The other one was okay, I guess, but just an A to B in the world of boyfriends or live-ins, you could say. Not the most whatever, but this new guy that she was with was really handsome, and she was all over him. He was all over her. It seemed like a nice situation. And then before I knew it, she was like, it looked like she was moving, but you live in apartments, so you never know if people are moving or reorganizing or what's going on. So I didn't really put too much into it. And then I saw her visibly moving. And the way that I wish, or the reason that I wish that there was something we could wear that would let women know that we're not, trying to pick up on them or anything like that, was one day I saw her loading a bunch of stuff into her car, and she was having trouble with this one particular box that was kind of wide and heavy. And I asked her if she wanted help. And she said no, but she said no, thank you. But she said it not in a bitchy way at all. But I could tell it was sort of like that thing where, sometimes when you're talking to people, and I've experienced this with men and women, because sometimes people are just like not having it on that level, But it was polite, but at the same time, it was almost like that, like, I don't want to get picked up on, or I'm not on the market type of vibe she was giving. And I genuinely, obviously, being a gay man, just wanted to help her because it looked like she was having trouble like squeezing that box into her truck. And when she said no thank you, and of course I just leave people alone when they're clear about not wanting help. And so I walked away, and then when I came back, it was gone. She was gone, so apparently she'd got it in her car, however she had got it in her car. And so, but I really am beginning to feel like this place that I'm living is like the place you live in before you find the place that you really want to live. Like that's kind of the vibe I'm getting, because the other neighbors, this is obviously not the beginning of the month, really. I guess it is. We're on day 7 or something, but they're moving out downstairs, and they're like a small family, well, I don't know how small of a family they are. I don't know if one of them has children from another relationship that don't live with them full time, because I don't see the two young ones that they have that are, I would say, around, I don't even know if they're twins. They're a boy and a girl, and they seem to be very close in age. Probably like between 10 and 12, something like that. Um, but they're not there all the time. What I do know is that the lady was pregnant for a while, and then obviously she had her baby, and then it's her and her husband. And so, but they too are moving out now. And the reason that's fresh on my mind is because right now, literally outside of my window, when I was, or, the sliding glass door off the balcony, I could see them like finishing up. They've been doing it the last couple of days, and now they're getting ready, like, the last things that they need, they're loading into the truck. And so, you know, I know that I don't plan to live here past my lease, and there's nothing wrong with this place when it comes down to it, but there are like ridiculous rules if you ask me. Like, I think I mentioned to you guys about not smoking even in the parking lot. Like, this is a non-smoking property, which I read my lease wrong when I was signing, when I was going through all of it. Not that I know that would have stopped me, but the way that it works out here is you can't even smoke in the parking lot. You have to go like to the ends of the property in order to smoke, the like right outside the property, which is very exhausting when I'm editing and I just want to have a quick cigarette and I got to walk all the way to the front or all the way to the back, and it's a pain in the ass, and the fact that I can't even smoke on my balcony. I wouldn't smoke in my apartment even if that was an option, even if that were allowed. I just don't like the smell of cigarette smoke in my place. Plus, I have my puppy, and I don't want to expose her to smoke in an enclosed area. But really, more than that, it really is about me not wanting to have to smell smoke all the time. I will, when I go on the road, sometimes I'll stay if it's an option, because in very few hotels is it still an option. But if it's an option, sometimes I will stay in a smoking room if it's just me. But I don't like the smell of smoke enclosed. It's just with hotels, if it's a non-smoking hotel like most hotels are now, then obviously you have to go all the way outside in order to be able to smoke. So that's why I'll choose a smoking room. Sometimes it's for the convenience. But, I really, I don't know why I'm yawning is what I really don't know. Because I had a full night's sleep, and it is now 12:13 in the afternoon. I've been up for a little while. I had some errands to run this morning. Sundays for me are just a very like get things done. I think I use Sundays like most people do, just kind of get things done. But I've been really good about the things that I'm supposed to be doing, like meditating. I don't know if I told you guys, but I'm really trying to keep up on my meditating. And I stutter to say trying because I don't like that mindset anymore. I prefer to just say I am meditating, not I'm trying, because, when you say you're trying, it's like you're giving yourself an out. And last night I wasn't able to, just because I got so tired. Because, I've had this thing lately, and I don't know if it's just a part of getting older, but once I eat, I'm ready to go to sleep. Once I have my dinner, within the next hour or so, I am going to fall asleep. And so I just kind of have to plan my days around that and put off eating for as long as I can. I mean, I can have something small, but if I have like a big meal, then it's going to be sleep time shortly after. And I just am really trying. I've been journaling, which I think is very important, just to get it all out, because I consider that to be like my conversation with myself. Between that and meditating, that's how I really stay connected with myself, is because I don't feel like for a lot of years I really checked in with myself like I needed to, where you're just running through life sometimes. Like, that was a lot of me living in LA, because I was talking about that with a friend the other day, and people are always asking me, like, when I'm going to go back to LA. And my answer is always when somebody pays me. And I don't plan to ever live in LA. I have no desire to live in LA. I don't miss LA as a city. I do miss some of my friends in LA, but I don't miss LA as a city because with the traffic being what it is, which is very cliche to talk about LA and traffic, but the reason that people always talk about traffic in LA is because it is such a factor in your life. Whether you want it to be or not, it's going to be a huge factor in your life if you live in LA because it really does change the way that you have to do everything. You know, like my gym in LA was like maybe an hour, or I should say a mile away. And no, it was probably about 2 miles away. And it could take me anywhere from 20 minutes to possibly as long as 45 minutes, depending on how bad traffic was and depending on what time I left. And then I was doing so much stand-up in LA that I really was just kind of going from home base, which was obviously my studio there, to whatever I was doing next. You know, the gym. I would take showers at the gym, which here I don't do that because the gym isn't far enough away that I have to really consider that to be a factor. You know, I can just come home and take a shower. In LA, sometimes it just is more effective time-wise to just take a shower at the gym and then go out and do whatever you have to do. It's part of the reason I appreciated Bijou so much when I had her because she was very understanding of my schedule and just a good baby and a good like life partner, you know. And I was journaling about that the other day. Like I feel like my life really started when I got Bijou because before that I had never had a dog as an adult, you know, and I really like the way that they help you organize your life, you know, because you've got to wake up to take them out to go potty. That's the first thing you've got to do every day. And so that keeps me from sleeping in too much. And also, I'm just better when I have something to take care of outside of just myself. And one of the things I used to hate about living alone when I didn't have Bijou, when I didn't have now baby girl, one of the things I didn't like about living alone is that there's no life in my apartment if I'm not home. So when I leave, when I come back, things are going to be exactly the same as they were when I left. And I like the little changes that happen when I'm gone, when I have a dog. You know, like with baby girl, she's got a bunch of toys. And with Bijou only ever played with Mr. Bill. Outside of Mr. Bill, Bijou really didn't play with toys. Like once in a while she'd throw something around or whatever, and she had a bunch of toys, and a fair amount of those carried over to baby girl. And at first I wouldn't let baby girl play with Bijou's toys. You know, I would keep them away from her. I'd put them up. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, why am I saving these toys for Bijou? You know, Bijou would be fine. She's gone, so she would be fine. And plus, when we had other dogs over, you know, the few times that friends would bring their dogs over and they would play with her other toys, as long as they didn't mess with Bijou, with Mr. Bill, Bijou wasn't having a problem. She didn't really care. And so I was just like, eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to give baby girl all of these toys. And since she was a little puppy at that time, some of them she tore apart. Bijou's actual Mr. Bills, you know, because I had bought a couple extra Mr. Bills for Bijou because I wanted her to be able to have them for her entire life. And, you know, I had like 5 of them. I think I still have 3, but they're all on the nightstand in my room where I keep Bijou's ashes. You know, all of her Mr. Bills are there. And at first I had even let baby girl play with one of Bijou's actual Mr. Bills, and then she started to get rough with it, and I was like, I can't have that. I have to have Bijou's. And as gross as it sounds, every once in a while I will smell one of her Mr. Bills because they still have the smell of her breath on them, believe it or not, even though it's been like 2 years now. I think we're going on 2 years exactly. Maybe today. I think it was August 9th when I lost Bijou. I think that was the day. Or maybe it was the 5th. I'm terrible with dates. But yeah, we just passed 2 years without. That's why she's been so heavy on my mind. That makes total sense now that she's been really heavy on my mind. And I know I talk about her a lot. But, Unbothered really is my time to let you guys know what's on my mind. So if I weren't talking about this right now, then I don't know what I'd be talking about because she was such a huge part of my life and she stays on my mind. There's not a single day that I don't think about Bijou. It's every day I think about her. And I've gotten past the point where it's, crying and like being sad or whatever. It's mainly just fun memories or, just thinking about what she would be doing. And I pick up her box of ashes and I put it to my chest every once in a while. And I can still feel her energy when I do that. And like the other night, I had a moment where I just really felt a kind of peace when I did that, because I don't do it all the time. It's not like a daily thing or whatever. It's just every once in a while, I'll walk in the room and I'll be like, I better say hi to my Bijou. And I pick her up and I, put her to my chest and I can feel her energy. But it really does help me, having a dog, having something to take care of, because otherwise it's just me. And I am liking that, I'm not having problems with the fact that I'm single. Like, I don't care about that right now. Like I told you guys before, if something were just to like knock on my door, figuratively or literally, but if a relationship were just to be absolutely perfect, I wouldn't turn it away. But it's not something that at this point in my life that I'm at all worried about or I'm thinking about. I don't want to be in a relationship right now because I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to a person. And when you first get with the person, you got to go out on dates, you got to have movie night with them, you got to, do things together and really get to know each other. And I don't have time for that. I don't want to make time for that. I don't want to think about, oh, I've got this thing I've got to do. And my last relationship, which was when I was engaged, it was such a nightmare for me in certain ways because people lie to me all the time. The biggest lie people tell me is that they're fine with my life. They're always fine with my life. They're always okay with, like, yeah, I understand you're going to have to be on the road and you're not going to be around that much and you do stand-up comedy and, everybody's fine with that. Until it actually gets into the relationship. And then it's like, we got to go to dinner with my mom and we got to do this with my family and it's Thanksgiving and it's Christmas. And none of that matters to me. It really doesn't. And the way my family does things works around what it is we all have to do. It's not like I'm the only one that's like this in my family. Everybody in my family, my nieces, everybody that's like a moving part in my family, I should say, like one of the actual factors, because when it comes to cousins, aunts, that kind of stuff, we don't do that in my family. Like, what matters in my family was the immediate family. So, me, my mom, my dad, my sisters, that's what mattered. And then my sister, the one that died, she has 3 kids. And so they're like, a part of the, what's it called? Like the actual family. But like even my youngest sister, which I should say younger sister, because I only have one younger sister. The 2 others were older than me, or are older than me. But my younger sister, she kind of kicks it with her husband's family. Like, that's the way they do things. You know, when they do Christmas and stuff, they'll stop by my parents' place on Christmas, but where they really enjoy the festivities is with her husband, and we're all fine with that. Like, it's not a thing where we're like, oh, she's not around, or there's no conversation about it. It's just sort of like, oh, where's she at? And then and I don't use names for my family in a lot of cases when I do my podcast, and that's just because I've had like some real nut jobs, and not a lot, but when it comes to my online life, I had one person post my parents' address on Facebook one time. And luckily, the whole community, even the people that didn't agree with me that day, because they were mad at me for something I had said. I know it was to do with politics, but I don't remember the specific situation. I do remember that I was at a show and I was just about to perform, and it was one of the big shows in Phoenix at that time. It wasn't This Week Sucks. It was I don't remember what they called that show. The worst show ever, maybe. I think that's what it was called. But it was a really good show, and it was really popular. And it was on Saturday nights, I believe. And I was asked to do it and headline it. And the way that it worked out was I was in this argument on Facebook, and there were several people that didn't agree with me. I remember that, because what happened was this person that was on the thread threatened to go to my parents' house, and they threatened to, I don't remember if they said shoot it up or something like that. But it was something very unhinged. And I was just like, what's the matter with you? And then the next message was them posting my parents' address and being like, is this where your parents live? And then I just remember everybody on the thread, even the people that didn't agree with me, just being like, did you just post somebody's personal information or parents' information on Facebook? And it got so bad for that person that they ended up not only deleting the comment, they completely blocked me at that point so that they wouldn't be on the thread anymore, or get, the messages from the thread anymore. But, and then I had one person that was posting the floor plan of my apartment in Vegas, or potential floor plans because he didn't even post the right one, like he was, which I don't mind talking about this because obviously I don't live at that place anymore. But I lived in a townhouse style apartment that I really did love. That was Bijou's main house. That was the one that I consider to be the most Bijou place ever. But that one had it was a loft style apartment, and so it had the really high ceilings because it, like, the upstairs was just the bedroom. That's all the upstairs was, and you could look over and see the living room. I really liked that apartment a lot. I loved that apartment. But that's where I lived, in a loft style apartment, and so he had found out the address that I lived at, the complex, and then he was posting like floor plans for studio apartments and like, oh, I'm sure Ty lives in a studio. And I don't know how that wasn't against terms of service, but it was not deemed to be against terms of service, even though he was telling everybody, like, yeah, I understand that he didn't have my apartment number, and so he wasn't even posting the right floor plan. But he definitely was posting the address to where I lived, which could have put me in a situation. Luckily and thankfully it didn't. But, so I don't use a lot of names when it comes to the people that are close to me. And that goes for family and friends, like, with Thomasina and Derequisha. I'm also very protective over their information or their, I don't tag them in a lot of things. Once in a while I will. And if I decide to, I'll ask them first and it'll be something very benign. But when people go after, like, people around me, it makes no sense, because the people around me, and I've said this before and I'll continue to say it because it's just true and it's the way that I live. The people around me don't always agree with my takes, and they don't even know all of the takes that I have. I post so much stuff between Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. I post so many opinions that nobody can keep up with everything that I'm saying. So if people were ever to go to any of these people and be like, did you know that Ty said this? And they tell you no, it probably really is no. And they're not messing with you, because nobody can keep up with the amount that I post. Not even I can keep up with the amount that I post. And sometimes I don't post at all on certain platforms. Like Facebook, I'm not a fan of Facebook, because Facebook is always getting mad at me for something. And I don't mean the users on Facebook. I mean actual Meta, the company, is always censoring me. And I do use the word censoring because it's cool if you have terms of service, but those terms of service should be uniform to everybody. No matter what Mark Zuckerberg says, because I did do a video about it like 2 years ago or whatever, when Mark Zuckerberg was saying that he was going to, they had changed the way content moderation worked, and they had, were getting rid of some of their staff as far as the people that were monitoring things, the moderation staff and that kind of stuff. It really didn't change much at all, because there still are a lot of left-wing people working at YouTube or Facebook. YouTube is great, if you ask me. They've got terms of service, but and they can be a bit vague sometimes, which people have complained about or whatever. But really, within certain parameters, you know what you can and can't get away with on YouTube. So to me, it seems pretty basic and pretty cool. I don't have a problem at all with the way that YouTube moderates, And once in a while, YouTube will let me know something was too much, and that's how we learn. But the longer I've been doing it, the less problems I've had with that, as far as me accidentally, because I learn, when people are clear about what's going on. But somebody can tell me something on Facebook, and I can tell them the exact opposite of that. Not any more inflammatory, not any less inflammatory. The exact same energy. The exact same wording. I will get banned from Facebook, or a 30-day whatever, or sometimes they'll just take down the post. But the other person will not get any consequences. So, and that's been for a long time, and I've had people tell me some pretty terrible things on Facebook, but I don't care. I'm not making a big deal of that. But then I say something back to these people, and all of a sudden I get a 30-day ban, a 7-day ban. And, as far as the money on Facebook, I know other creators have talked about this before. It's not enough money for me to worry about. It's just not. And I'm not trying to be that guy like, oh, I make so much money. That I'm very honest with you guys about that. I'm not acting like I'm the richest man in the world. But Facebook is literally peanuts, and you have to work really hard if you want to make. So, I don't even concentrate on the money when it comes to Facebook, because it's just not enough for me to chase after, and I'm not going to work that hard. Rigo Star, I think is what he goes by. You guys, I've mentioned him on regular videos before. You guys, main channel videos, I should say. But you guys have, I'm sure, seen him. He's the one that, you may not like the truth, but I'll never tell a lie. Which I'm back and forth on how I feel about that guy. Just as, his opinions, I feel like, between him and Trish Hyman, which if you guys don't remember, I think it's Trish. Yeah, it's Trish Hyman. She's really fallen off, which I knew would happen because there's no real substance there. Which if you guys don't remember Trish Hyman, she was the one she got a lot of attention and a lot of support from the Gold Gym incident, which I did a video on that too. But she was like, there are men in the women's locker room, men with penises in the women's locker room. And it got on TMZ and, she had a lot of support. She ran for mayor recently in LA. And with both of them, they're both former true left-wing people. And every once in a while that comes out in the causes that they take on or the way that they go at certain topics. And one thing that I personally don't want and am not a fan of is when people try to turn the right into the left. She's angry. Somebody's by her door and she is not having it. Don't worry, baby girl. They're afraid of you. They know better. They know better than to even try to come in here. They heard you. You already know. Everybody in this building is afraid of you. When you talk, they listen. But we have this conversation quite a bit in case you guys can't tell. Which I don't even mind that. I really don't mind this little girl. Every once in a while, the one place that we can get in trouble is if she's on the balcony doing that kind of mess, so then I have to bring her in when she goes crazy because she likes to get sun in the morning. That's part of her ritual. Like I take her outside to go potty, since it's right here, we just go out on the balcony. I told you guys before, I bought grass for her, the artificial grass. And so she goes potty there. The other day, I think I told you guys last week, I gave it a really good cleaning, took it over to my parents' place and completely hosed it down and basically power washed it and sprayed it with everything. And we're on a really good track with everything. I'm really happy with where I'm at with everything. But my point is, I've never been a fan of people trying to turn the right into the left. And that's what I notice a lot of the people like Rigo and Trish will do is, and I'm not bad mouthing them. This is stuff that I've said on videos and public posts where I've tagged them, because I do consider us to be kind of in the same space, at least to a certain degree. And with Rigo, he has opinions, and a fair amount of them I agree with. And when I agree with people, I agree with them. But one thing I notice with people that come from the left is they'll try to run the same purity test on the right that they used to do on the left. And the right just doesn't work that way. When it comes to the right, that's one of the things that I like most about the right. Because I was never one of those people, even when I was voting left. Because I wouldn't ever say that I was truly a lefty. Because I had voted for Obama twice. I had voted for Al Gore, which, thankfully that didn't happen. Al Gore would not have been the best choice, in my opinion, But I was never one of those people that if you didn't vote the way that I voted, that I didn't like you. Or if you had different opinions than I did, even when it came to things that I guess should have really bothered me, when people weren't for gay marriage, which I told you guys before, I am not a big gay marriage guy. I didn't think that was something that we needed, especially on that or under that term marriage. As far as the rights go, yeah, I'm an American and I should have the same rights as everybody else, so when it comes to gay marriage and the rights that go with that, I could definitely understand why there was a fight for that, being able to spend your loved one's last moments with them, your partner, your significant other, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, being able to visit them in the hospital in their last moments, and being able to actually, or for your partner to have rights if you should pass on unexpectedly, and you guys shared a home together, and the things that go with actually being married, tax breaks, that kind of stuff. All of that I was 100% for. But like the term marriage, I was not for. And so when people were saying that they were not for gay marriage, I didn't have a problem with that. I just have never felt like everybody had to agree with me. And a lot of people from the left that come over to the right, they want to bring that same mentality with them, where it's like, well, if you don't agree with everything I say, then clearly you don't deserve to be. And it's like, that's not the way the right works. The way the right works is we do debate and disagree about things. And that's just what it is, Like, there are a lot of people that are on the right that are not at all MAGA. I personally am more MAGA than I am on the right, which, yeah, I'm not going to go into that right now because Unbothered isn't about that. But I definitely am not in support of this Iran situation that's happening. I wish the president hadn't gotten us involved in that. I don't just blindly support everything the president does. But again, that's a part of where I like the way that the right works, is because there are plenty of us that feel that way. Even if overall, because I will tell you, overall, I do think that President Trump has been the better choice. I mean, I stand by the fact that I knew that President Trump would be the better choice, is a better way of me wording that. But when it comes to certain decisions he's made, certain things he's decided to take on that I don't really understand why, like with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't love Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't even really like Marjorie Taylor Greene. But there are things that I definitely have agreed with her on, and I do feel like she was loyal enough to President Trump for long enough that when he really went nuclear on her, I didn't feel like that was a good look. I feel like that's something that he probably should have handled privately with her, and fully expressed his displeasure in the way that she was expressing herself, or expressing herself about the things that he disagreed with her on. But I didn't think that he had to turn that into a whole, Marjorie Trader Brown, and all of that. I didn't think was necessary. And like I said, I'm not a Marjorie Taylor Greene supporter like that, where it's like, I feel like I don't even feel like she's right about it. I think she's crazy. I think between her, Jasmine Crockett, Nancy Mace, even to a degree, and AOC, Ilhan Omar, there's a couple of them that just, to me, there was so much unnecessary just girl fighting. And that's why I mentioned those names, is because it was just such Real Housewives energy. And I felt like, you guys are politicians. You guys should be somewhat above this kind of behavior, and you're all going at it like it's Real Housewives. And it was, your eyelashes are too long, or, your eyelashes are too big, or you're a bad built body. And okay, yeah, that's cute for if you're reading somebody at a club. But that's not what I want from representatives in the House. That's not what I'm looking for. And so when I say, but at the same time, sometimes Donald Trump will just get on these kicks where he's kind of being a Real Housewife. And for me, I'm just sort of like, yeah, can we skip that? How about we've already done that? How about we already understand that you will definitely get down in the dirt with these people. We know that, but that's not important right now. But it's sort of like you got to take it all, because with, Donald Trump, for him to be what he is, he has to be all the way him. So I get that, because, there's parts of me that some people think are unnecessary, or things that I'll say that people think are too far. And it's sort of like, well, that's just naturally what I felt in the way that I would have expressed that. And if I were to filter myself on that, I'd have to filter myself on a lot of other things, or on everything else. And then you end up in a position where you're like trying to guess at what people want from you rather than just being you. So I do get why Donald Trump does things the way that he does them, so but my point is, and when it came to Trish specifically and running for mayor of LA, what people like Trish don't understand, because I like with Trish, because with Rigo, what I was trying to get at there is Rigo has some actual opinions, and like I said, some of them I agree with, some of them I don't, but I really do. I can see that he actually has opinions. With Trish, it was like she made this statement, she went viral, and then she expressed the way she really felt about things. And then the group that she was getting the most support from, which was the TERFs, and by TERFs I mean actual, they identify as TERFs, not just trans people have called them TERFs because they're very clear about women's spaces and that kind of stuff. Because those TERFs I support, the ones that just are putting down boundaries and saying there is a difference between a woman and a trans woman, or a woman and a trans person. There's just a difference. That's what it is. I talk about that all the time. It's for me, that's very basic common knowledge. It's not something that really should have to be argued, but because the trans activists have made it a thing, that's what makes people have to be extra firm, or women have to be extra firm about putting their foot down. So I get that, but the ones that identify as TERFs will turn their entire lives about that. And they'll go places sometimes where it's like, if you don't like the way that particular organization runs their organization, don't support it, don't be there, don't give them your money. But if it's, because here's the way I feel about it, and this even goes for me. If I were to belong to an organization or a club that was doing things that I didn't agree with, and I had to pay to be there, then I would just stop going and stop giving them my money. And to me, that's the strongest statement I can make to show them that I'm not in support of what it is they're doing. But with some of the people that actually consider themselves to be TERFs, they will go places where everybody there, including the women, has agreed to that being their terms of service, for lack of a better term. And then they'll start saying that they're standing up for women's rights. And it's like, but if the women that are paying to be there, and I'll give you guys a specific example so it doesn't have to be so abstract. There was one time that I was hit up by a woman that's a TERF. We ended up getting into it later, but this was when we were still on really good terms. And she hit me up because there was this competition that was, it was professional cycling, or is it professional? I don't know if it was professional. Either way, it was cycling, competitive cycling. That's the best way to put it. And so what happened was, she had gone to this cycling event that was put on by this particular organization. And she was like, they're letting men compete with women, and I do it like that because that was part of the thing. She had an annoying voice. It's just, she just has an annoying voice. And so she's But like I said, we were cool at the time, so I was willing to put up with her annoying voice. And also keep in mind that, my support comes from a very pure and real place in all of this. It really is about women's rights. And like, my support is not dependent on any group doing for me. Like the TERFs never gave me money. They never did anything particularly to shout me out or to elevate my platform or any of that stuff. So when I do for them, I really am doing for them. And we just happen to agree on certain things. And so I'll, uplift their voices and share their stories and, and so but it's not like a situation where I owe them because of something they've done for me. So, and really, if we're being 100% honest, I get more attention on their stuff than they do. So, like, if they're really trying to get the word out about something and I decide to make a video about that, I will bring way more of a spotlight to their cause in most cases than they're able to, because what a lot of them don't understand, well, they do understand. That's why they're kind of almost a non-issue when it comes to a lot of things, because where they're strong is on X. That's where the TERFs are strong. Well, there's so much TERF support on X that really they are preaching to the choir. So you can get a bunch of support and a bunch of eyes on something, but they're eyes that already agree with you. Where when I'll share one of their stories and do a video about it, they'll get a lot of people that in a lot of cases didn't know what was happening. And so they're getting outside support from the things that I do too, because, I talk about a lot of things. And that's the way I think a lot of them have kind of screwed themselves, is because they don't talk about a lot of issues. It's just one note, one note, one note. And so if you're already on board with that, you're going to continue to listen to them, but they're not growing their audience because it's just that one thing that they talk about. And so, sorry, my nose is itching. I'm not picking my nose. It's right under and it's bothering me. And so what happened was she shared this article with me, and Fox News had picked it up too, but it was about her going to this cycling event, and then she said that the guy assaulted her because he ripped up her sign, and he I don't remember if he pushed her phone or something like that. And so I go to research it, so that I can make a video on it, because she really wanted me to talk about it on my channel. And she had hit me up private message on X to let me know and sent me some links and stuff. So I do the research on it. And this particular cycling event that she was at, because, she went to it and she was like, you have women competing with men. Men should not be competing with women. Women don't want to compete with men. Okay, that's a premise, right? Women don't want to compete with men. I'm completely down with that. Like I say, that's if women don't want to compete with men, they shouldn't have to. Or, biological males, I should say. Because, the argument is they're trans women. So that's the argument. And so I go to research it because I was going to do a video on it. And I go to the website of the organization, which I can't remember the name of it. I don't want to slander anybody, so I'm not even going to try to remember the name of it, because I just can't. This was like months and months ago. And I click on the links to see about the details for joining and stuff, for competing in one of their events. And it was something like between $100 and $200 to compete in their events. And they seem to be relatively clear, from what I read on the website, about them respecting gender identity, which if you know the cycling community, at least the LA cycling community, which I knew quite a bit about, and Vegas was similar. They're usually cool with gender identity because that's just one of the kind of punk rock type things that to them shouldn't really matter. That's what I've noticed about a lot of the cycling community. So if somebody identifies as a woman and they want to compete in the women's division, then they're going to allow that. So at that point, for me, it's not about this just being forced on women. The women that choose to pay their between $100 and $200 to compete in that event know what the deal is. So they're going into it with open eyes. And I refuse to infantilize women. I refuse to be like, women aren't smart enough to read the same thing I read and understand that that's just the way that particular organization works out. So, in my opinion, because this person went out of their way to be at that event in order to protest it, they should have done the same homework I did and not wasted their time being there, because that's what everybody signed on for. That's the way I felt about it. And so at that point, I felt like you're really kind of being a Karen right now by even going down there. And yeah, it was rude that he ripped up your sign. But like I told you guys, I don't remember if he pushed the camera out of his face or not. But I do remember her like being in his face with the phone, and I feel like as long as nobody physically assaults you, like truly assaults you, pushing a camera out of your face, no matter who you are, is okay. Nobody owes you that. Nobody owes you to have you put their camera in their face and violate their space, and they're supposed to completely do nothing. And so, like I said, I don't remember if he pushed it or how he did it, but obviously it didn't make an impression on me enough, because if it had really been a thing where she had been assaulted, I would have been like, yeah, that's not right. Even if she, because like I said, if you push the camera out of your face, I don't have a problem with that. But say a man pushes the camera, a woman has a camera in a man's face, and he pushes the camera out of his face and he punches her. That unacceptable. I would definitely be like, yeah, that shouldn't have happened like that. But just pushing the camera down to me isn't assault. Maybe legally it is. I don't know. Battery. I don't know, because I always get those confused and how that exactly works out. Maybe you guys can correct me in the comments. But like for me, it was just sort of like, well, you went down there wanting to start trouble, where the competitors, the participants aren't worried about it, but you're worried about it for them. And to me, that's where I feel like she's doing what I said I refuse to do. I'm not going to infantilize people. Women can read the terms of service the same way that I can, and if you're going to compete in it, you should read it even more closely than I did. Like, you should have it committed to memory, especially the parts that bother you, because that's either the reason you're not going to do it, or it's what you're going to ignore so that you can do it. But either way, that's your choice. And so I didn't want to get involved in that, because it was just sort of like, yeah, if I do the research and I notice that that's what the deal is, then I'm not going to be able to be favorable to your side. And so at that point, I felt like the nicest thing I could do was just not make a video on it, because otherwise I would have made a video that was contradictory, and really being contradictory in that context wasn't particularly, like, in my opinion, interesting or whatever. Like, there was no reason for me to do a video on it once I saw that I wasn't going to be in favor of the position that they took. At that point, I'm kind of working against them, and I didn't want to do that either. But I feel like you have to be more than one note on just in general. And that's one of the things that bothered me about Trish Hyman when she was running for mayor, was that her whole thing was, women do you agree? Because she was asking everybody, like she asked Eric Swalwell, which R.I.P. to his career. But if he did everything they say he did, he deserves that. But who knows? But like, she was shaking Eric Swalwell down about it. Just everywhere she could go, she was like, do you agree that only females can be women, or do you agree that women are women? That kind of thing. And if you're trying to run for mayor of LA, you've got to have a more nuanced take than that, because so much of LA is bought into that. And so you have to at least have a different way of wording it, or a different way of going at it, that's going to be persuasive to the voters. That's just the way it works. And as far as it's not the mayor's call on a lot of the situations that are going on in LA. Like if you take the gym situation specifically, I've done videos on that, and it's very unfortunate. But in LA's and San Francisco, that's the way the laws work there. So you can work to change the laws, but the existing laws make it so that you can't discriminate on somebody based on biological sex when their gender identity is something different. So how are you planning to change that would have been a better way to go at it, or what exactly are you going to do to find some sort of compromise in the way that works out? Because there's an established way that things work in LA. And if your entire platform is women are women, I don't think you're going to get enough support in LA specifically to really be a contender in a mayoral race. And so, and so it made it so it was just her screaming the same thing over and over. And I do say screaming because that is what she always falls to, is like, it starts off with the like, do you agree that women are women? And then if they don't right away, just say what she wants them to. But can you agree that women are women and we should protect women? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know exactly what the way is to go at that, but I don't think that's the way. I don't think that you're going to be able to shout people into just doing what you want, especially if you know the way politicians and politics works, is they will kind of wall you off in a way. Mentally, they'll wall you off is what they'll do if you're yelling at them, especially because they're politicians and they're used to dealing with people not being in favor of everything they do. And they're used to arguing with each other. And so if you come at them too strong and too heavy, especially about something that really in certain, I honestly feel like the smartest thing for every parent of a young girl and woman that is not in favor of what's happening in places like LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, all of these places, all of these cities and states that are allowing women or men to compete, biological males to compete in female sports and be in women's locker rooms and that kind of stuff. The strongest message you can send is just to leave, because your taxes are going to this. You're a part of their system. You are living in their city. And so I feel like the strongest message you can send is to leave and be vocal about why you left. Be very clear about why you left. And if enough people do that, that's how they'll learn. Just like that cycling organization. If you're paying $150 to $200 for these to participate in these events, and you at a point just say, I'm not going to participate in these events anymore because when I do that, I'm basically paying to have to compete against biological males, and I don't think that's fair. I think they have an unfair advantage. If that's what your thinking is, I think you should fire off an email to them just saying, look, I've competed several times. I've spent X amount of dollars doing your events, and I can no longer do that moving forward because I don't think it's fair that I should have to compete with biological males. And to me, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. You can just let them know. And you and several others, if you decide to do that because you want to take a stand, they will notice, because that will affect their pockets. That will affect the amount of money that they have to put on these events, because these events are expensive, to put on as well, to buy the permits and to do all the stuff that they have to do on the back end. It's very expensive. So if they start losing money from women, and that's the reason, that will be more likely to make them revisit than a person that's coming in as an outsider that doesn't compete in those events and has just decided to go out of their way to be there to make this point. And that's the same with the way that I feel about, like I said, LA, New York, or LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle. Is if more women and the parents of young girls, which I understand isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but if you feel like that, to me, if you feel like that point is that important, then that's what you do. Like with me, I was doing a lot of stuff in LA, a paid regular at every comedy club. I didn't like the way the comedy scene had turned so PC and leaning towards political correctness. And so I decided to leave LA, and I was very open about the fact that that was one of the reasons, is that I just didn't like what the stand-up scene has turned into. And a lot of people now, like really good comedians, have left LA because of that exact reason. And LA can either learn its lesson, or they can continue to deal with a lot of the bad comedy they have now, because people that know the LA scene as far as stand-up goes, pretty much across the board, even the good comics that stayed, which there's very few good comics that actually stayed in LA, but the few good comics that have stayed in LA are very open about the fact that LA comedy is in a rough spot right now. It's not good. So what you do is you pack up, you take your talent, you take your money, you take your participation, and you go somewhere else. And that's really the way I feel about that. Stay unbothered.